Hashtag the doubt. Sarah Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stepped into the gun range. The smell of gunpowder and metal filled the air. She had been coming here for 3 years, but today felt different. Today, Marcus Thompson was here. Marcus was known as the best shooter in the city. He had won every competition for the past 5 years. His trophies filled an entire wall at the range. Everyone looked up to him. Everyone except Sarah. "Look who's here," Marcus said loudly when he saw Sarah. His voice carried across the entire range. Other shooters turned to look. The little girl who thinks she can shoot. Sarah ignored him and walked to her usual spot. She set down her rifle case and began to unpack. Her hands moved with careful precision. Each piece had its place. "You know," Marcus continued, walking over to where she stood, "I've been watching you shoot. You're not bad for a beginner, but you'll never be championship material." Sarah looked up at him. Marcus was tall and broad, with arms like tree trunks. His expensive shooting gear sparkled under the lights. Everything about him screamed confidence. "What makes you so sure?" Sarah asked quietly. Marcus laughed. It was a cruel sound that made other people in the range uncomfortable. "Because I've been doing this for 15 years. I started when I was 12. My father was a military sniper. I learned from the best." He pointed to his rifle. It was a custom-made piece that cost more than most people's cars. "This beauty can hit a target at 3,000 meters. I've done it many times. But more importantly, I have the skill to use it." Sarah continued, setting up her equipment. Her rifle was older, simpler. She had bought it used from a retiring police officer. It didn't look like much compared to Marcus's weapon. "You see," Marcus went on, "shooting isn't just about having a steady hand. It's about understanding wind, temperature, humidity. It's about knowing how your bullet will behave at different distances. It's science." Other shooters had gathered around to listen. Marcus loved having an audience. "Take wind speed, for example," he said, showing off his knowledge. "At 1,000 meters, a 10-mile-per-hour crosswind will move your bullet about 3 feet off target. Most people don't even think about that." Sarah finished assembling her rifle. She checked the scope and tested the action. Everything felt right. "Then, there's the Coriolis effect," Marcus continued. "The rotation of the Earth actually affects bullet trajectory over long distances. But I guess they don't teach that in basic shooting classes." "Actually, they do," Sarah said simply. "If you pay attention." Marcus's smile faded slightly. He didn't like being corrected, especially by someone he considered beneath him. "Well, knowing and doing are 2 different things," he said. "Theory is easy. Performance is hard. That's why I've won every major competition in this state." Sarah walked to the firing line. She lay down in the prone position and looked through her scope. The target was 100 meters away. For most people, this was a challenging distance. For experienced shooters, it was routine. "Watch and learn," Marcus said to the crowd. He took position next to Sarah with his expensive rifle. "I'll show you how it's done." The range master called for the line to be hot. Marcus fired first. His bullet hit the bullseye perfectly. The electronic scorer beeped and displayed a perfect 10. "That's how you do it," Marcus said, standing up and brushing dirt off his shooting jacket. Sarah took her time. She controlled her breathing and felt her heartbeat. Between beats, when her body was perfectly still, she squeezed the trigger. Her bullet hit the same spot as Marcus's. Another perfect 10. "Lucky shot," Marcus said, but his voice sounded less confident than before. They shot several more rounds. Each time, both shooters hit perfect scores. The crowd watched with growing interest. It wasn't often that someone could match Marcus shot for shot. After 30 minutes, Marcus was getting frustrated. He had expected to easily outshoot this unknown woman. Instead, she was keeping up with him perfectly. "This is baby stuff," he announced loudly. "Any decent shooter can hit targets at 100 meters. Real shooting happens at long distance." He pointed toward the far end of the range. "See that target at 300 meters? That's where skill matters." Sarah looked downrange. The 300-meter target was barely visible to the naked eye. Most shooters at this range never attempted such distances. "I bet you've never even tried shooting that far," Marcus said with a smirk. You'd lose that bet, Sarah replied calmly. This made Marcus even more angry. He didn't like losing bets, and he especially didn't like being wrong about people's abilities. Fine, he said. Let's make this interesting. You and me, 300 meters. Best out of 5 shots. Winner takes bragging rights. The crowd murmured with excitement. This was better than any organized competition they had seen. Sarah considered the challenge. She had shot at 300 meters before, but not often. Her rifle wasn't really designed for such distances. But Marcus's attitude was getting under her skin. Okay, she said, but let's make it more interesting than bragging rights. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What do you have in mind? If I win, you apologize to everyone here for being rude. If you win, I'll admit you're the better shooter and leave you alone. Marcus thought about this. He was confident he would win. His rifle was superior, and he had much more experience at long distances. Deal, he said, extending his hand. They shook on it. The crowd gathered closer to watch. The range master moved the electronic target system to 300 meters. At this distance, the target looked like a small dot. Even with scopes, hitting the bullseye would require exceptional skill. Marcus went first again. He took a long time setting up his shot. He checked the wind flags, adjusted his scope, and calculated the bullet drop. After several minutes, he was ready. His first shot hit the 8-ring. It was a good shot, but not perfect. Marcus frowned. He had expected better. Sarah took her position. She didn't spend as much time calculating as Marcus had. She seemed to have an instinctive feel for the shot. Her bullet hit the 9-ring. Lucky again, Marcus muttered, but he sounded worried. The second round went to Sarah as well. Her bullet hit the 10-ring, while Marcus managed only a 9. By the third shot, Marcus was sweating despite the cool air in the range. His hand shook slightly as he aimed. The pressure of the crowd watching was getting to him. His shot hit the 7-ring. Sarah remained calm. Her breathing was steady, her movements precise. Her third shot hit the 10-ring again. This is impossible, Marcus said loudly. There's something wrong with the scoring system. The range master checked the equipment. Everything was working perfectly. For the fourth shot, Marcus tried to change his technique. He held his breath longer and gripped his rifle tighter. The result was worse. His bullet hit the 6-ring. Sarah's fourth shot was another bullseye. The crowd was amazed. She was shooting better at 300 meters than most people could at 100. Marcus didn't even need to take his 5th shot. Sarah had already won 4 out of 5. But his pride wouldn't let him quit. His final shot was his worst yet. The bullet hit the 5-ring, barely on target. Sarah's last shot was perfect. Another 10-ring. The crowd erupted in applause. Marcus stared at the scoreboard in disbelief. He had been thoroughly beaten by someone he had dismissed as amateur. That was just luck, he said angrily. 300 meters isn't even that far. Real long distance shooting starts at 1,000 meters. Sarah packed up her rifle calmly. You made a deal, she said. Time to honor it. Marcus looked around at the crowd. Everyone was waiting for his apology. His face turned red with embarrassment and anger. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. I'm sorry for being rude. They are happy now. It wasn't much of an apology, but it was something. As Sarah finished packing her equipment, Marcus couldn't let it go. You know, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. If you think 300 meters makes you special, you should try real long-distance shooting. I'm talking 4,000 meters. That's where the men get separated from the boys. He paused for effect. Or in your case, where the real shooters get separated from the lucky amateurs. Sarah looked at him carefully. 4,000 meters? That's right. Military snipers train at that distance. It's beyond anything civilian ranges can offer. You need special facilities, special equipment, and, most importantly, special talent. Marcus was regaining his confidence now. 4,000 meters was an extreme distance that few people ever attempted. He had done it only a handful of times himself at a special military training facility. I doubt you could even see a target at 4,000 meters, let alone hit it, he continued. The crowd listened with interest. 4,000 meters was more than 2 miles. It seemed impossible to accurately shoot that far. In fact, Marcus said, warming to his theme, I bet you couldn't hit a target at 4,000 meters if you had 100 tries. Sarah finished zipping up her rifle case. She stood up and looked Marcus directly in the eyes. "How much do you want to bet?" she asked quietly. Marcus was taken aback. He hadn't expected her to actually respond to his challenge. "What do you mean?" he asked. "You said you bet I couldn't hit a target at 4,000 meters. I'm asking how much you want to wager on that." The range fell silent. Everyone knew that Marcus had just talked himself into a corner. Well, that's not really possible to test," Marcus stammered. "There's no place around here that has facilities for 4,000-meter shooting." "Actually, there is," said an older man from the back of the crowd. "The military training center about 50 miles north. They have a long-range course that goes out to 5,000 meters. I used to train there when I was in the service." Marcus felt trapped. He had made his boast publicly, and now Sarah was calling his bluff. "Even if we could arrange it," he said, "your equipment isn't suitable for that kind of distance. You need a specialized rifle, proper scope, match-grade ammunition." "Let me worry about my equipment," Sarah said. "Are you willing to put your money where your mouth is, or are you all talk?" Marcus's pride wouldn't let him back down in front of all these people. "Fine," he said. $1,000 says you can't hit a man-sized target at 4,000 meters. One shot. Make it 5,000, Sarah countered. And 3 shots. The crowd gasped. $5,000 was serious money. 3 shots at 4,000 meters was still an incredibly difficult challenge. Marcus hesitated. $5,000 was a lot of money, even for him. But he was confident that Sarah couldn't possibly make such a shot. Her performance today had been impressive, but 4,000 meters was in a completely different league. "You're on," he said finally. $5,000. 3 shots at 4,000 meters. They shook hands again. This time, both of them gripped tighter. "I'll contact my friend at the military facility," the older man said. "If you're both serious about this, I can probably arrange access to the range next weekend." Sarah nodded. "I'm serious." Marcus nodded too, though he was starting to have second thoughts. "So am I." As the crowd began to disperse, people talked excitedly about the upcoming challenge. Word would spread quickly through the shooting community. By next weekend, there would probably be quite an audience. Marcus watched Sarah leave. She moved with quiet confidence, not like someone who was worried about an impossible challenge. For the first time, he began to wonder if he had made a mistake. But 4,000 meters was 4,000 meters. It was an extreme distance that required not just skill, but perfect conditions and exceptional equipment. Marcus had his custom rifle and 15 years of experience. Sarah had an old police rifle and what appeared to be natural talent. Talent was good, but at 4,000 meters, physics mattered more than anything else. And Marcus was confident that physics was on his side. As he packed up his own equipment, Marcus started planning. He would spend the week practicing at the longest ranges he could find. He would check and recheck his rifle's accuracy. He would research weather conditions and prepare for every variable. Sarah might have gotten lucky today, but luck wouldn't carry her 4,000 meters. When next weekend came, Marcus would prove once and for all who the real shooter was. What Marcus didn't know was that Sarah had her own plans, and her preparations would be very different from what he expected. The stage was set for a showdown that would be talked about in shooting circles for years to come. 4,000 meters away, a target waited. Between now and then, both shooters would prepare in their own ways. Only one of them would walk away $5,000 richer, and only one of them would have their reputation intact. The real test was just beginning. The preparation word spread fast through the shooting community. By Monday morning, every gun range, sporting goods store, and online forum was buzzing about the upcoming challenge. Sarah Martinez, an unknown shooter, would face Marcus Thompson at 4,000 meters for $5,000. Most people thought Sarah was crazy. Marcus was a legend. He had military training, expensive equipment, and 15 years of competition experience. Sarah was just someone who showed up at the local range a few times a week. But Sarah didn't seem worried. She went about her week normally, working her day job at the engineering firm and visiting the range in the evenings. If anything, she seemed calmer than usual. Marcus, on the other hand, was in full preparation mode. He drove to 3 different long-range facilities, practicing at distances from 800 to 1,500 meters. He tested different types of ammunition, adjusted his scope settings, and calculated ballistic tables. On Tuesday, Sarah received an unexpected visitor at work. Tom Bradley, the older man from the range who had mentioned the military facility, stopped by her office. "I hope you don't mind me tracking you down," he said. "I got your name from the range membership list. We need to talk." Sarah invited him to sit down. Tom looked serious. "I've been thinking about this bet all weekend," he said. 4,000 meters is no joke. I've seen trained military snipers struggle at that distance. Are you sure you know what you're getting into?" Sarah smiled. "I appreciate your concern, Tom, but I'm not going in blind." "What do you mean?" Tom asked. Sarah pulled out a drawer from her desk. Inside were several notebooks filled with calculations, weather data, and ballistic charts. Tom recognized some of the formulas from his military days. "I've been studying long-distance shooting for 2 years," Sarah explained. "I know I don't have much practical experience at extreme ranges, but I understand the theory." Tom flipped through one of the notebooks. The calculations were complex and accurate. Sarah had clearly put serious thought into this. "Theory is good," Tom said, "but for 1,000 meters requires more than calculations. You need the right equipment, perfect conditions, and a lot of luck." "What about the right training?" Sarah asked. Tom looked up from the notebook. "What do you mean?" "I mean learning from someone who actually knows what they're doing at long range. Someone who's been there before." Tom realized what she was asking. "You want me to coach you?" "If you're willing. You mentioned you trained at that facility. You know what 4,000 meters really means." Tom thought about it. He had been a sniper instructor for 10 years before retiring from the military. He had seen thousands of students try and fail at long-distance shooting. But something about Sarah's approach impressed him. "Why did you take this bet?" he asked. "You could have just walked away after beating Marcus at 300 meters. Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Because I'm tired of people like Marcus. He thinks he owns the shooting world just because he's got expensive gear and a loud mouth. Someone needs to show him that skill matters more than equipment." Tom nodded. He had known plenty of Marcus types during his military career. Good shooters who thought their success gave them the right to look down on others. "All right," he said finally. "I'll help you. But we're going to do this right. No shortcuts, no wishful thinking. 4,000 meters demands respect." That evening, Tom met Sarah at the range. Instead of shooting, they spent 3 hours going over the fundamentals of extreme long-range shooting. "The first thing you need to understand," Tom explained, "is that at 4,000 meters, you're not really shooting a target. You're shooting at a mathematical prediction of where the target should be when your bullet arrives." He drew diagrams showing bullet trajectory, wind drift, and time of flight. Your bullet will be in the air for about 6 seconds. A lot can change in 6 seconds. Sarah absorbed every detail. She asked intelligent questions and took careful notes. Tom was impressed by how quickly she grasped complex concepts. "Wind is your biggest enemy," Tom continued. "A 5-mile-per-hour crosswind at 4,000 meters can push your bullet off target by 20 feet or more. And wind isn't consistent. It can change direction and speed multiple times along the bullet's path." They talked about temperature effects, humidity, barometric pressure, and even the Coriolis effect that Marcus had mentioned dismissively. At 4,000 meters, every factor mattered. "What about my rifle?" Sarah asked. "Marcus is right that it's not ideal for extreme range." Tom had been thinking about this problem. "Your rifle is actually better than Marcus gives it credit for. It's a proven design with good accuracy potential. The problem is the scope and ammunition." He explained that extreme long-range shooting required specialized scopes with accurate tracking and high magnification. It also needed match-grade ammunition loaded to precise specifications. "I have some contact in the precision shooting world," Tom said. "Let me make some calls." By Thursday, Tom had arranged several important things. First, he borrowed a high-end scope from a friend who built custom rifles. Second, he contacted an ammunition manufacturer who agreed to load special rounds for Sarah's rifle. Third, he scheduled time at a 1,000-meter range for practice. Friday evening, Sarah and Tom drove to the 1,000-meter facility. It was Sarah's first time shooting at such distance, and she was nervous. Remember, Tom said as they set up, at this distance, everything is magnified. Small mistakes become big misses. Take your time and trust your calculations. Sarah's first shot at 1,000 meters hit the edge of the target. It wasn't a great shot, but it was on paper. Tom was encouraged. Good, he said. Your fundamentals are solid. Now let's work on reading the wind. They spent the next 4 hours practicing. Sarah fired shot after shot, with Tom coaching her through each one. She learned to read the grass waving in the distance, to feel the wind on her face, and to estimate its effect on her bullet. By the end of the session, Sarah was consistently hitting the center of the target. Not perfect shots, but good enough to prove she could handle the distance. How do you feel? Tom asked as they packed up. Better, Sarah said. But 4,000 meters is still 4 times farther than anything I've done. Tom nodded. That's why tomorrow is going to be interesting. Meanwhile, Marcus had been having his own week of preparation. He had driven to every long-range facility within 200 miles, practicing obsessively. His shooting had been good, but not perfect. At 1,500 meters, he was hitting about half his shots in the center ring. Marcus was confident, but he was also worried. Sarah's performance at 300 meters had surprised him. He couldn't afford to underestimate her again. On Friday night, Marcus received a phone call from his friend Jerry, who worked at a high-end gun shop. You hear about your competition? Jerry asked. What about her? Marcus replied. Tom Bradley has been helping her. He bought some serious equipment this week. Custom scope, match ammunition, the works. Marcus felt a chill. Tom Bradley was legendary in shooting circles. If he was coaching Sarah, she might be more dangerous than Marcus had thought. Also, Jerry continued, I heard she's been practicing at the Precision Rifle Academy. That's not where amateurs go to play around. Marcus hung up the phone feeling less confident than he had all week. He had assumed Sarah was just a decent local shooter who had gotten lucky. If she was serious enough to get professional coaching and equipment, maybe she actually had a chance. But Marcus pushed those doubts aside. He had 15 years of experience and natural talent. 1 week of coaching couldn't make up for that difference. Saturday morning arrived clear and cold. Perfect conditions for long-distance shooting. Sarah and Tom arrived at the military facility early, along with about 50 spectators who had heard about the challenge. The facility was impressive. The shooting position was on a hill overlooking a valley that stretched for miles. At 4,000 meters, the targets were barely visible even with binoculars. Marcus arrived 20 minutes later, driving an expensive SUV loaded with equipment. He had brought 3 different rifles, just in case, along with several types of ammunition. Nervous? He asked Sarah as he unpacked his gear. Excited, she replied calmly. The range master explained the rules. Each shooter would have 3 shots at a standard military silhouette target at 4,000 meters. The target was roughly the size of a person from shoulders to waist. Hits anywhere on the target counted as success. The winner would be whoever made the most hits out of 3 shots. In case of a tie, the range master added, we'll go to sudden death. 1 shot each until someone misses. Tom helped Sarah set up her rifle and scope. The borrowed optic was a work of art, with crystal-clear lenses and precise adjustments. The custom ammunition looked perfect, each cartridge loaded to identical specifications. Remember everything we practiced, Tom said quietly. Trust your wind reading and don't overthink it. Marcus was setting up his equipment nearby. His rifle was beautiful, with a custom stock and precision barrel. Everything looked professional and expensive. The wind was light and variable, coming from different directions at different altitudes. Both shooters spent time observing the conditions, watching grass and flags at various distances. Shooters ready, called the range master. Both Sarah and Marcus lay down in the prone position. Through their scopes, the target looked impossibly small and far away. Marcus would shoot first. He took his time, calculating wind speed and direction. He adjusted his scope based on temperature and humidity readings. After 5 minutes of preparation, he was ready. The sound of his rifle echoed across the valley. Through binoculars, the spotters watched for the bullet's impact. After what seemed like forever, they saw dust kick up near the target. "Miss," called the spotter. About 2 feet low and 1 foot left. Marcus was disappointed, but not surprised. For 1,000 meters was a distance where even expert shooters missed more often than they hit. Sarah took her position. She went through her own calculations, but spent less time than Marcus had. She seemed to have an intuitive feel for the conditions. Her shot rang out across the valley. The spotters watched intently. "Hit," called the spotter. "Center mass." The crowd erupted in surprise. Sarah had made a shot that Marcus had missed, and she had done it on her first try. Marcus stared at the spotting scope in disbelief. The bullet hole was clearly visible in the center of the target. "Lucky shot," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. For the second round, Marcus adjusted his scope based on his first shot's impact. He spent even more time calculating and preparing. This time, his bullet hit the bottom edge of the target. It was officially a hit, but barely. Sarah's second shot was another center hit. The crowd was amazed. 2 perfect shots at 4,000 meters was almost unheard of, especially from an unknown shooter. Marcus was sweating now despite the cool air. He had 1 shot left to stay in the competition, and Sarah already had 2 hits. Even if he made his last shot, Sarah only needed to hit the target once more to win. "This is impossible," Marcus said loudly. "Something's not right here." The range master checked all the equipment. Everything was working properly. The distance was accurately measured, and the targets were regulation size. Marcus lined up his final shot. His hands were shaking slightly from stress. He forced himself to calm down and focus. This shot had to count. His bullet hit the target, but just barely. It clipped the left edge of the silhouette. Technically a hit, but not impressive. Sarah had already won with 2 hits to Marcus's 1, but she decided to take her third shot anyway. The crowd watched in silence. Her final bullet hit dead center again. 3 shots, 3 hits, all in the center of the target. Marcus sat up and stared at the target through his spotting scope. Sarah had just delivered one of the most impressive shooting performances anyone at the facility had ever seen. The crowd applauded loudly. Even Marcus's friends and supporters had to admit they had witnessed something special. Tom walked over to Sarah and shook her hand. "Outstanding shooting," he said with pride. "I've trained hundreds of snipers, and I've never seen anyone shoot that well at 4,000 meters on their first try." Marcus slowly packed up his equipment. His reputation as the best shooter in the state had just been shattered by someone he had dismissed as an amateur. "I don't understand," he said to no one in particular. "How is this possible?" Sarah overheard him. She walked over with her rifle case in hand. "You want to know the secret?" she asked. Marcus nodded, looking confused and defeated. "There is no secret," Sarah said. "Just practice, preparation, and respect for the challenge. You spent this week trying to prove you were better than me. I spent it learning how to make the shots." She paused and looked directly at him. "And maybe next time, don't underestimate someone just because they don't look like what you expect a shooter to be." Marcus watched her walk away with Tom. He had learned an expensive lesson about assumptions and humility. As the crowd dispersed, people talked excitedly about what they had witnessed. Sarah's performance would become legendary in shooting circles. The unknown woman who had outshot the state champion at an impossible distance. But for Sarah, it was just the beginning. Tom had introduced her to a world of precision shooting that went far beyond local competitions. There were national tournaments, military contracts, and opportunities she had never imagined. Marcus, meanwhile, faced the humbling reality that being the best in one place didn't mean being the best everywhere. He had some serious thinking to do about his attitude and approach to shooting. The $5,000 bet was just money. The real prize was the lesson both shooters had learned about skill, preparation, and respect for the sport they both loved. As Sarah and Tom drove away from the facility, Tom asked, "So what's next?" "There are some national competitions coming up that might interest you." Sarah smiled. "Let's see what 4,000 meters was just the beginning. I'm curious to know how far this can really go." Behind them, The military facility grew smaller in the distance. But the memory of what had happened there would last much longer. Sometimes the most important victories aren't about winning money or trophies. Sometimes they're about proving that skill and determination matter more than reputation and expensive equipment. Sarah had proven that today, and she was just getting started. Hashtag the discovery 3 weeks after the 4,000-meter challenge. Sarah's life had changed completely. Word of her incredible shooting performance had spread far beyond the local shooting community. She received phone calls from precision rifle manufacturers, invitations to competitions, and even inquiries from military contractors. Tom Bradley had become her unofficial manager, helping her navigate this new world of opportunities. They met every morning at a small diner near the range to discuss offers and plan her future in competitive shooting. "You've got 3 major competitions interested in you," Tom said over coffee, spreading papers across their table. The National Precision Rifle Championship, the International Long Range Challenge, and something called the Extreme Distance Invitational. Sarah looked through the paperwork. The entry fees alone were more than she made in a month at her engineering job. "These look expensive." "Don't worry about that," Tom said. 2 equipment manufacturers want to sponsor you. They'll cover expenses in exchange for using their gear and wearing their logos. It was overwhelming. A month ago, Sarah was an unknown shooter who practiced at a local range. Now she was being courted by the precision rifle industry. But the most interesting call had come the day before. A man named Colonel James Harrison had contacted her directly, asking to meet. He wouldn't explain why over the phone, just that he represented interested parties who had heard about her shooting. "Military?" Tom had asked when Sarah told him about the call. "Maybe. He wants to meet at the range tomorrow afternoon." Tom looked concerned. Military contracts can be lucrative, but they're also complicated. These people don't fool around. The next afternoon, Colonel Harrison arrived at the range exactly on time. He was a tall, lean man in his 50s, with the bearing of someone used to command. Despite wearing civilian clothes, he looked unmistakably military. "Ms. Martinez," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for meeting with me." Sarah introduced Tom, explaining that he was her coach and advisor. Colonel Harrison nodded respectfully. "Mr. Bradley's reputation precedes him," the colonel said. "I believe you trained some of my people back in the day." Tom studied the colonel's face. "Harrison, Fort Carson? You ran the advanced sniper program?" "Among other things," Colonel Harrison replied with a slight smile. They found a quiet corner of the range where they could talk privately. Colonel Harrison got straight to business. "Ms. Martinez, your performance at 4,000 meters has attracted attention in certain circles. What you accomplished shouldn't have been possible for someone with your limited experience." Sarah wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an accusation. "I had good coaching and favorable conditions." Colonel Harrison shook his head. "I've seen the video. Tom's coaching was excellent, but what you did goes beyond training. You made 3 consecutive hits at an extreme distance on your first attempt. That suggests natural ability that's extremely rare." He pulled out a tablet and showed them some statistics. Less than 1% of military snipers can achieve that level of accuracy at 4,000 meters, even after years of training. Yet you did it on your first try. Tom leaned forward. "What are you getting at, Colonel?" "We're always looking for exceptional talent," Harrison replied. "But more than that, we're trying to understand what